Right, my name is Hero. That's my pen name. My real name is Keith. And I am an author, an artist, and a historical investigator. I've been doing presentations and stuff like this since 2011 on African history, particularly with a focus on Black history before slavery. What we were doing before that time became my focus. I got started doing these because I was doing it for my son's school. And they were doing like a Black History Month, and the teacher told me they were going to do everything after slavery. She's like, we're going to start at slavery and go up from there. And I was like, well, you don't know anything, are you going to teach me anything about what we were doing before that? And she was like, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. So I asked her, could I do a presentation on that particular subject, and she let me. And the kids liked it so much, I started doing presentations a lot more about that particular subject, and it led me to this. The African or Afro-Origins of SuperHeroes. So a big part of the Afro storytelling tradition is based on our stories. We used to tell our stories since time immemorial. Some of our ancient storytellers were called griots, and they would tell stories of family lines and lineages, things that had been done prior to, and they also told stories regarding geology, agriculture, the stars and astrology, and how all those things, all of our stories used to be related to our way of life. So how we could navigate, how we would plant, and then the reap and the harvest and all that, all those things were tied up in our stories. Those stories became myths. Those myths became source material for comic book artists. When comic book artists began to create their creations, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, characters like this, the earliest characters came from depictions and then modifications of mythological characters. So for instance, Hercules is a very super strong character from Greek mythology. His character has been portrayed in the media just as Hercules, but also his character has transformed into different characters with super strength and a bad temper. I'm sure you could right off the bat, just with those two things, what character corresponds to Hercules? Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk is a remix of Hercules, which is an ancient Greek mythological character. I'm going to get into some of the other mythological characters regarding Superman, Wonder Woman, et cetera, as this goes on. A lot of these original myths originate in this area, the African. If you go by the scientific theory that Africa is the cradle of civilization, which is a theory, there's some other ones, but we'll say Africa is the motherland and America comes second. They figure that they just everybody sails over. There is a whole other line of thinking that America, too, had a civilization, an ancient civilization, and there were indigenous people in the Americas as well. There's a line of thinking that says that basically Black people are indigenous to the whole planet, which means all these mythological characters and such began as looking like you and I. One of the oldest characterizations of a heroic figure that we can find historically, mythologically, and religiously is Heru. Heru was a king and known as a protector of kings. He was a falcon-headed, sometimes depicted as a falcon-headed god or deity. They were not necessarily fit into the current concept of a god or a goddess. The ancient Heru was known as a Neteru, or a nature, which is more of an aspect of nature, as opposed to something that lords over you that requires your worship. The original identity was that it was a form of consciousness that would take hold inside of a person, which will allow them to express something called the Christos, which is the Christ mindset, if you will, which later on becomes Jesus Christ and some of the other Messiah type characters. But Heru is the prototype. As a matter of fact, his name is where we get the name hero from. So originally, he could fly just like Superman. He had a cape. He had a red cape. His colors were red, white, and blue, right? Superman's colors are red and blue. But he gets his powers from the sun. Haru gets his powers from the sun. Matter of fact, he is the sun. He's an aspect of the energy which emanates from the sun, known as Ra. So this is the original concept for Superman. You also get other heroes who owe a part of their tradition to Haru, and you can actually see it linguistically. So you get Haru in ancient language and ancient Kemetic or Egyptian language. They did not use the vowels when they wrote. They just used the consonants. So Haru would be reduced down to HR. Haru is also the prototype of Hercules and Thor. Both of them were sons of a father deity who gave them power, or their power was like related to the weather, related to electricity, the sunlight. These different energetic beings, which the Her, gives them the power of the hero. All right. You also have a part of that tradition. Later on, you get Harry Potter. You can see the HR still there. You also get an additional one. There's an additional Egyptian deity called Ptah. His the consonants in his name are PTH. So Harry Potter is really the Haru Ptah. Yes.
Was this done consciously or was it subconsciously that they did this?
Well, that's a great question. And the answer is some people did it consciously, some people did it subconsciously. The conscious and the subconscious part actually begins in the tradition of how these things are taught to us. As an artist and as authors who write and things like that, when you go take a writer's workshop or you go take literature at school, some of the first things they do is introduce you to the ancient literature. They introduce you to Greek literature. They introduce you to Roman literature, Homer, the Iliad, things like that. Those become like source material. They tell you that is where the original archetypes for heroes come from. So you learn about Hercules, Achilles, Mercury, you learn about the gods, Zeus and Poseidon and all these wonderful creative things that they can do, all these powers that they had and displayed. Well, those things became a part of our cultural zeitgeist of like open source material for how you can create stories, how you go through the hero's journey, and like the archetype for the type of rise and fall of a hero comes from our ancient literature. So in that aspect, it's both conscious and subconscious because we get like the templates or archetypes of superhero characters from that source material. So some people do it more consciously than others. Some people will take the story of the myth and like re-allegorize it in their story. And then some people just take bits and pieces of the hero's journey. Some people take bits and pieces, and because they're all related, there's a correspondence, that you can track. That's all. So some people do it more consciously than others. Some people just kind of inherit it from the movies that they watch, the anime that they love so much, and they might not know that those characters have a connection to these myths and this heritage. But they love the character so much, maybe they start jocking off of that and they put that in their story, and they don't know that this has like an ancient connection to mythology. It's just in their story because it's something they liked in a story that they liked. So it kind of happens organically. Some people do it, the people who do it on purpose are a lot more detailed and methodical about it because they are purposeful about going to the source material and they want to create something that resonates, right, with the hero's journey. They want to create something that resonates with, this is what a hero does. This is how a hero gets knocked down. This is how his enemy develops. This is how he has to fight against his own doubt, against his own darkness, things like that. And then they'll look to specific mythology to, like one of the most popular is the Jesus mythology. People create Christ-like characters that are like Neo in the Matrix. He's a savior. He saves himself. First of all, somebody comes like a John the Baptist. Well, that's Morpheus. He comes and says, hey man, you're something better than what you bigger and better than what you even think. That's John the Baptist and Jesus and Mary Magdalene is, Trinity. It's even a Trinity. Trinity is the name of the Godhead in Christianity. So to answer your question, yes, they do it on purpose, and sometimes it's just subconscious. Sometimes people don't even realize it. So my question became, can people really have superpowers? And the answer is absolutely. We have people that they take action. They do what they need to do in order to save themselves and save others. Everybody has. I believe there's something super about everybody, and it's just. I believe that's our job to figure that out, what that is. There's another very interesting connection between ancient cultures of melanated people and superheroes. And one of those biggest ones is the mask of power. A lot of superheroes wear a mask. And originally, we are the mask creators. We created these, you see them all the time if you go to museums, and if you go to an African art store, you see a whole bunch of masks everywhere. Those masks were not just pieces of art. They tell us that they're pieces of art. And that's wrong. These people put these on, and then they would take on the aspects of whatever deity resides in the mask. You wear the mask, you get the power. That was our ancient concept. Masks are infused with spirit and energy and can be used to draw out or attract to the wearer powers and abilities that augment the natural abilities of the wearer. You wear the mask, you get the power. So, for instance, in the Orisha tradition, the goddess Oya, who that is a depiction of, you can see her, she has the power of flame. She has a lasso and she whips the flames and whips electricity. She whips up storms. So she is the archetype for the X-Man Storm. She actually creates storms as well. This is where the mythology that they borrowed from to create that character, live action. And as you can see though, she has on a mask. The mask in the Orisha tradition and many other spiritual traditions, what that does is it's symbolic of the fact that any woman can be Oya. The goddess acts and reacts and lives through people. So if you wear the mask, you get the power. If you wear the mask of Oya and you follow her traditions and all that, then you can tap into the power which is symbolized behind her mask. Zorro is another character who wore a mask. He wears a mask. One of his primary reasons for doing that is to protect his alter ego. That's the next concept, in that we have two different personalities. The superhero is classically bipolar. He's classically Peter Parker and Spider-Man, Bruce Banner and the Hulk, you know what I mean, Tony Stark and Iron Man. Those are actually different characters. When they put on the mask, they become the hero. When they take it off and put on their regular street clothes, just a regular person. Some of them are not gods in the traditional sense where they could just walk around with their face out. The gods, the godlike superhero characters are the ones who tend to walk around without the mask. The ones that are human beings but who become a super person or a super persona put on a mask. Just to change gears a little bit, we had a American folk hero named John Henry, who was known for slinging his hammer, and they pitted him against machinery. He was like the ultimate natural force, and then they came around with this machine that was going to put him out of work. He's like, I could beat that old machine anytime, you know what I'm saying? That was his legend. Well, they took that. There's another one where conscientiously they did this. They took that character and turned him into this. This is his name in the comic, John Henry Irons. They took straight up American myth of a black man who had a hammer and could create railroads, and they made a superhero character out of him, which actually I think they had Shaq playing him in a movie, that particular version of the Superman persona. We got Geronimo. He's another character like Geronimo. Whenever people do something brave, like brazenly brave, jumping out of a plane, what do they yell? Geronimo! They got that from a real man. He was just that badass. He went up against the United States Army, Confederate Army, Spanish, French. They could not stop this dude. He was like a real life badass, to the point where the military still respects him to this day and his tactics, because he was like the ultimate guerrilla warrior in early America. So I told you I was going to touch a little bit more on the African symbolism of Superman. I did it a little bit earlier with Haru, but I want to go further. So in going further, I want to call your attention to a couple of things. This little S curl on his forehead, which a lot of Superman, they still in the movies to this day put that little curlicue on his forehead, and that S symbol on his chest. We're going to examine these in a little bit more detail. So the S symbol on the forehead, they got from this symbol on the forehead of Egyptian pharaohs. That is the symbol of the Uraeus. It is a symbol of power. It's a symbol of like Kundalini rising. It's energy which raises from your base or your root, the floor, all the way up your body through your spine and to the top of your head right here. Here at your forehead, it becomes a symbol of power and protection. That symbol translates directly to, that's why they consciously use that curlicue on the front of Superman's head, because he is an archetype or aspect of Haru, which this is an aspect of. The red cape, once again, the red cape and the blue, shorts that he wears, that comes from Haru. Another character, Catwoman, she comes directly from the goddess Bastet, which is also a cat-headed goddess. She also is related to the goddess Sekhmet, who is a lioness goddess. So these are the cat deities that later on became these female superhero characters. Haru is also related to Luke Skywalker. And I'm going to show you how. Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. I want you to notice a couple things. You got this little guy. This is Haru. And he's holding in his hands, it's kind of blurry, but he's holding serpents, alligators, lions, all these very dangerous animals, scorpions. And then you have this character on top of his head teaching him. That's his master teacher, known as Bess. Okay? He's a very small, diminutive character, and you see him riding on his shoulders as he's training him. This is Haru going through training. He has something on the side of his head. This is called the Horus lock. That's where you get the word warlock from. The warlock comes from that. And in Star Wars, if you recall, the Padawans wear a little lock of hair. That's the Horus lock. That's where they get that from. And I'm going to take you even further. Bess, teaching Haru, becomes the image of Yoda riding on the back of Luke Skywalker. Same image, same little ugly head sitting on top of his head, whispering the secrets of the Force to him. This is Yoda. This is Bess.
Oh, wow.
All right. This is something called a Jed pillar. The Jed pillar is related to the god Osar, who is Haru's father. Haru got his power from Osar. Osar did something called raising the Jed pillar. The Jed pillar is this. It represents a human spine. These are the four elements, and the top represents mastery over the four elements and the earth. It's an object of power, and it looks very similar to this, a lightsaber. Here you have Haru. That's the Jed pillar right there. He's holding in his hand. In between two other symbols of power. This is the crook and the staff. The crook is like a shepherd's crook. Its symbolic meaning is mercy, in that it pulls the sheep in, or it saves them from danger. The staff, on the other hand, or the rod, if you will, is for discipline and martial art. In case somebody need to ass whip. That's what that's for. You got the Horus lock, and then you have the Uraeus symbol of power and protection and wisdom on top of the head. The Jed pillar, when Luke goes through all of his training, he becomes a Jedi. The Jedi, once he remember before he became a Jedi, he was wearing white. After he became a Jedi, he put on the black. Yes, sir.
So how is it not that he took that from this?
What do you mean?
You know, like how did he, when he made the
You about to go? Yeah. Excuse me, just 1 second. All right, man. Thanks for coming.
No problem, man.
I really appreciate you. I'll see you, man.
Yeah, see you later.
All right, I'll call you. That's my son.
Oh, okay.
All right.
When he created Star Wars,
Yeah.
did he look this up?
Yeah.
How did that
Oh, yeah.
happen?
Okay. So George Lucas was a student of a man named Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is the father of mythological studies for white people. If you study the work of Joseph Campbell, there's actually something called the Joseph Campbell Foundation. He was a professor, a college professor who taught a lot about mythology and its connections to psychology. He tied a lot of mythology and the work of Carl Jung and what's the other guy? Sigmund Freud together, and he talked about how these myths were forms of stories that were told to help regulate our minds and our culture, to help us stay. It's like he explains how the different myths go into our spiritual archetypes, and how gods and goddesses, their story mirrors our soul's journey through life. Anyway, George Lucas was a student of his, and Joseph Campbell became a consultant for George Lucas as he was writing Star Wars, as he was completing the movie.
So he was just pulling from this?
Yes.
Wow.
He was given these pieces and shown how they fit together, and shown how they could be, he could use the correspondences in his work. Very, very clearly. There's no ambiguity about it at all. He was a student of that mythology, and his teacher showed him how to insert these characters into his work. Flat out. Darth Vader is.
He knew
Yeah.
you were taking this from like
Oh, yeah.
culture.
Yeah. Not just that, he also draws heavily from Hebrew culture, because Anakin, Vader, all those names are Hebrew. That's Hebrew in origin. Yes. So the Darth Vader, the Darth is from the Kabbalion, or not from the Kabbalion, Kabbalah. It's from a form of Jewish Kabbalah. The Darth is the center point which takes you to the dark side. So yeah, it's related to a lot of mythos. So it's not just, it wasn't just the Heru mythology or the Asar mythology. It's also the Yahweh, the Mashiach. It's also the Japanese samurai tradition. He used that to draw upon. He also drew upon like the ancient, the people from the Andes, the people from, it'll come back to me. But he pulled from a lot of mythologies to put together, like, not just the original concept, but as they continue to build out the world, they kept adding old mythology to it to help them create more of it. So yeah, the more you read, they go forward with it, they actually were reaching further back and broader. Like, they just touched upon a lot more cultures to fill out the world of Star Wars.
My
Yeah.
mind's blown.
So yeah, they do it all the time. All of them. The Flash, he's this guy. His archetype is this guy who is Thoth. Thoth is also known as Hermes. He also became Mercury in Greece and Rome. Mercury is the god of speed. He's the god of communications and messages. The reason why he's so fast is because he travels at the speed of thought. which is faster than the speed of light. So that's where they got the idea from the Flash from. The Riddler, he has an ancient Kemetic correspondence as well to Osar. Osar, if you can see that, once again, that's the crook. But if you look at it, you see that, don't that look just like a question mark? Osar became the Lord of the Perfect Black, or the Lord of the Dead. When you died, you had to go stand before him. And guess what he did when you got there? Asked you a bunch of riddles. You had to solve his riddles. So that's where they got the Riddler from. Spider-Man, we all know that. It's Anansi. Anansi this is a depiction of Anansi, the original spider god. The spider god, they even went so far with this mythos that in recent comic books, they went on to say that Spider-Man and every Spider-Man across the multiverse got their powers from Anansi, the spider god. That's actually a part of the Spider-Man mythos. They stopped trying to hide. They just went on ahead and said it's Anansi. It also is an aspect of Spider-Woman. This is Spider-Woman. This is her symbol. This is a symbol of an American goddess named Spider-Woman, or Spider Grandmother, they call her. This is a depiction of her. She weaves her web of conscious life and awareness. It flows from the woman, or the female womb. She's the one who has the DNA that touches everybody. She touches every genetic lineage, every correspondence around the world. We live in the web. We're caught up in the webs of Isis, because that's another name for Spider-Woman, is Isis. So that's another tradition that they borrow from. We have real life historical characters like Hannibal from Carthage, one of the baddest generals on the planet. They still study his strategy. He was from Carthage, which was not too far from Rome. It's like the northern part of Africa. And he went to battle with Rome. They claim he never lost a battle, and that he took elephants into Italy and did battle with them there. They had elephants so big that they could really put people on them. This is a real thing. They had these elephants this large. The Romans that he went up against, they said that they didn't have a defense against these large elephants. They had something called a phalanx, which they would all stand in these rows with these big long spears. But these huge elephants would just come trample them down. They couldn't stop them. Well, this idea was picked up in another movie. They showed it in Lord of the Rings, where they showed them big, they called them olifants in Lord of the Rings, but they ripped that idea right out of history from Carthage and Hannibal to show you that. Once again, that was something done on purpose. J.R.R. Tolkien, he grabbed that right from history. Africans in Greece. A lot of people don't know, due to whitewashing, that the original Greek people were black. So they were the creators of universities. The black Zeus is black, Hera is black, Hercules is black. All of them, in their original depiction and characterizations, they were known as black deities. They also participating in something called the Mystery School. The Mystery School is key. They don't talk about that too much, but the mysteries had to do with developing your own relationship and consciousness, God consciousness. That's what the Mystery School had to do with, like getting in contact with God through nature. So we got Hercules. This is Hercules. These are the depictions of him in Hollywood. This is an original depiction of Hercules. These are on these Sephoric jars. These jars were, once upon a time, these water jars, they would hold water in these. Water holds memory. And they would use these jars to tell stories. So the griot would come out with the water jar, and as they were telling the story, they would kind of spin the jar around. The jar has different scenes on it, almost like a modern day reel. So the storyteller would come out with the reel and tell the story of what these characters did. But that's a Hercules, dark-skinned. He has on a lion head mane. This is from an invincible lion that he killed. Like, this is tougher. This is the toughest substance. Nothing can penetrate this. He has this war club that he could use to knock his, people unconscious. And he also, they don't show it here, but he had a bow and arrow that was his special weapon too. It was like he had poison arrows that he had dipped in the blood of a hydra that he killed. That if you got shot with this, you were dead. It didn't matter if you was God, demigod, monster, anything. If he shot you with that, you were dead.
You can't argue that because you have this character on the right who is Pharisee.
Exactamundo. So it's not like they were colorblind. They knew exactly what they were doing. Some white historians did attempt to reformat or reframe how we saw this. But like you said, you can see it for yourself. There's no explanation required. You can see him here subduing. You know what I mean? You don't get any clearer than that. That became this in our culture, right? Ultimately, Haru becomes Hancock, another one of those stories where it's like he's a hero, but he forgot who he was. In his forgetting, he becomes a bum. He becomes like the ultimate, in America, he becomes the average black man that everybody hates on, right? But when he was reminded of who he really was, his true power, he was able to pick back up on who he was. It required him getting back to his history. He had to go back to who he was, though. In the movie, he had amnesia, right? So my point is, if we get back to our history, it'll help us to wake up too. So that's it. That's the whole presentation. I got a little book list right here, if you're interested.
This is phenomenal. Hang on 1 second. Do you do this anywhere besides here?
I will do it anywhere. I do it anywhere they got room, where I could do a presentation. Here I go. Here you go. I got some more.